Hey guys, so super excited today. We have Bob from Fantasy DJ joining us. Bob is amazing. He's been in this industry for a crazy long time. We've been working together, I want to say probably 10, 15 years, a very long time, probably closer to 15 years at least. And I'm sure before I was in with like David's, we probably crossed paths when I was still working with my father. But Bob, as far as I'm concerned, if you guys follow this podcast at all, one of the things that I love talking to is people, who go their own way, not a traditional route. You're not working every day to make somebody else rich, and talk to people all different paths, right? Like some people are just starting out, some people are like well on their way. And as far as I'm concerned, like Bob won. He won. He did it. He has a wildly successful DJing business in what, from an outsider, I would say it's like a very saturated market. Like I feel like there's a lot of DJs out there, but Bob and his team, he's not the only DJ for his company. Every weekend you're working. You're always there, and it's like super inspiring. We were chatting a little bit before we turned the mics on, and you're just a wealth of knowledge. And I don't feel like you sugarcoat things. Like, you're fairly honest. But how did you find it? How did you get to DJing? Did you always just kind of like it, or?
It's a great question, and it's funny because I'm the youngest of 4 siblings, so I grew up being very influenced by my older siblings' music. Grew up a huge Beatle fan in the 70s, early 80s, and went to college thinking I had this great knowledge of music. Turns out I didn't. I was pretty narrow-minded. Freshman year you'd go to a party, and it'd be all guys at the party at 10 o'clock, and they'd be playing rock music. And then around 11:45, all the girls would show up, and the music would change. And I remember going over to the DJ going, "What are you playing this stuff for?" And he'd just kind of look at me like, "You're a freshman." But believe it or not, I was also extremely shy in high school, like painfully shy.
Really?
So, yeah, the fact that I get up in front of 200 people and do introductions at a wedding is shocking to some people that knew me back then. But in college, I was in a fraternity, and we weren't allowed to have fraternity houses on campus at William Patterson.
Okay.
So I know this may be shocking to you, but I used to host a lot of parties in my apartment on the weekends.
What?
Yeah, I know. In fact, quick sidebar, I met my wife in college, and when we were just getting to know each other, she was a commuter. I lived on campus, and saw her in the elevator on campus. I said, "How come you never come to any of my parties?" She looked at me, she goes, "Well, I don't know when they are," and I pulled out that great joke of any day that ends in Y. So I would host these events at my apartment in college, and I had my one fraternity brother, Tommy Hannigan, who had started working for this DJ company 1987, 88, called Star DJs.
Okay.
Biggest company in New Jersey at the time. And he would come to my apartment on every Friday and Saturday night at like 2 a.m. in a tux. And I'd be like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, I got this job." And he's like, "Bob, it's perfect for you. You got to try it." And we'd set up, drink beers, and pontificate till 5 a.m. And I'd be like, yeah, maybe. And I finally broke down and went to one of their meetings and really loved the energy of the owner of the company and what they do. And I said, "Well, I get paid to play music. This is pretty darn cool." And started doing it. And I honestly thought at the time, a year or two, this will be a fun job,
right,
while I'm in school.
Right.
And
what were you going to school for?
Partying? No. It's funny. I started out as an accounting major, and I knew 6 weeks into my freshman year I did not want to be an accountant.
Accounting?
I know.
Holy cow.
I know. Hard to believe. But my dad was in finance and stuff like that. And my older brother was an accountant. Still is my CPA to this day. But I ended up changing to political science and a minor in business just to get the piece of paper.
Right.
I had no idea what I wanted to do.
I was the same. I went to college because we came from a generation where you get good grades in high school so they can go to college so they can get a good job. And I double majored in English literature and philosophy.
Look at you.
Yes.
Philosophy.
Yes. I'm just rife with information that doesn't actually affect anybody's lives.
I literally paid my roommate down the hall, or my suite mate down the hall who lived next door to us, Kevin Kelly, $25 to write my philosophy paper final because
Really?
I couldn't stand the class. So God bless you.
Oh yeah, that's all I did was, and I mean, and Rutgers. I went to Rutgers, and whether you know this or not, Rutgers is actually like one of like the top in the world for their philosophy department. They have like an amazing philosophy department.
Did not know that.
Yeah. So it was like if you like that stuff, it's funny. Philosophy, one of the jokes my professor made is philosophy is one of the very few things where you'll spend hours and hours discussing stuff that actually has no tangible real world application. You just talk about it forever. But awesome. I'm a chatty Cathy, so I guess that works for me.
It absolutely did. So yeah, I started doing it in college, and I worked for this company from 1988 to 1995, and I was perfectly happy.
Oh, so a long time.
Yeah, I was with them a while, and I was content. You know, they paid me decently for the time. I didn't have to do any of the legwork.
Right.
They would send me the gig sheets a month out. I'd call the couple, do the wedding, and next week I'd get a paycheck. It was cool. They started cutting pay here and there, various things, and then two of my coworkers left to start what ended up becoming Fantasy Productions.
Okay.
And they called me and they said, "Do you want to join up?" Now, by this time, I'm married. My wife and I are expecting our first child.
Did you have a day job as well?
I had a day job. Yes, back then I always worked full time and did the DJing on the weekends. And once my wife got pregnant, we made the decision that she was going to be a stay-at-home mom. So to me, having two jobs was really important to
security,
two incomes. Yeah. But when they approached me and they said, "You want to come join us?" I'm like, do I leave this established company that is keeping me pretty darn busy, pay is to maybe do this leap of faith and jump into the lake and hopefully swim, not sink. And I made the decision to join the two of them. Within a year, those two guys retired and just left everything to me.
Wow. That's like amazing. Now, what was that like? Was your wife, like, did she just kind of like trust your judgment, or did you guys talk about it?
Yeah, we definitely talked about it, and she might say differently, but I think she trusted my judgment.
Because it's one of the really interesting things that I noticed when I talk to people about this is like, despite, like, you know, now everybody says, like, there's no difference between, you know, everybody can be everything. But one of the super interesting things is that men, like, approach this stuff, like, a little bit differently than women. Like, women, it seems like it's, like, exciting and adventurous and scary, but it's, like, you're excited to go do it. And you want to succeed, but it seems like men take on like this additional responsibility where, you know, like they feel an overwhelming obligation to provide for their family. And I just have noticed that the men that I spoke to, even if they weren't married at the time, like maybe they just had a girlfriend or fiance, but they knew it was serious. It's one of those things where they wanted to do the right thing for themselves, but also they had this overwhelming feeling of obligation to do the right thing by whomever they were providing for.
Yeah, and I think that traditional male role, going back to the 70s, of mom's a stay-at-home mom, dad's out working, is the dad provides financially.
Right.
And you know, maybe the mom provides emotionally and things like that.
Somebody has to take care of those crazy rugrats all day.
Absolutely. as I used to call my wife, and I still do, she was director of development for the world's two most precious resources, our daughters, Stephanie and Victoria. She wasn't a stay-at-home mom. She was director of development. But yeah, so we talked about it, and we weighed the pros and cons. And, you know, me being someone that I always want to do the right thing, or I always try and do the right thing, I didn't leave that company cold and just say, "I'm done," because at the time they were booking me pretty heavily.
Okay.
I had probably 18 months worth of potential jobs. So I was juggling both, but I did the right thing. The day I resigned, I sent a certified letter to the president of the company, the director of sales, copied all the sales reps and said, "As of today, please do not book me anymore under Star DJs. These are the list of jobs that I have on the books, and I'm going to fulfill those jobs." And then I just started doing my own thing. Wasn't giving out my own cards on their jobs. I didn't think that was right. But, you know, was promoting myself whenever I could, or promoting the company whenever we could. And one of the things that really jump-started us, and this was back in 96, 97, we did a bunch of bridal shows through Elegant Productions. Betty and Brenda. Betty.
Yeah, I've worked
God
with
rest her
Brenda
soul.
a lot.
Yeah, Betty passed away a number of years ago.
Elegant Productions is a company who puts on bridal shows.
Yes, I'm sorry I didn't expand on that.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
But those shows got us established
Right.
in the business and got us established within the community and stuff.
I had a similar experience my first year out because I worked for my father for many, many years. And then my first year out when I'm like, right, like Cherryville photography is going to be a thing. I did the same thing. I did a ton of bridal shows and same experience. I was just starting out, so different pricing structure, but it's like what got my name out there, what got me established, what got me all my own leads.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, I think back to it. If your cocktail hour was in the same room as the reception, we didn't charge you for cocktail hour. Like it was just
Right.
free cocktail hour. Anything to
get your name out there and
get the name out there.
Get those referrals.
Exactly. And that's what those bridal shows really helped catapult us into, having a busier book, getting our name out there. And then you start seeing the same people and they start to see you and the hall says, oh, well, how'd you like to be on our list? And then you build your business that way. But
a hall being on a hall's list. So so you get married at a wedding venue, whether that is, and a lot of times the venues will have a preferred list of vendors, and that's the list. For us, it's been huge being a preferred. It's something that we, I don't know, maybe it says more about us than it says about you. We always approach people if it's like a venue we really like. We'll ask to be on the list.
Yeah.
But it's everything, right?
It is. It's huge because so many times the first thing the couple will book when they're getting married is their catering hall.
Yeah.
Or if they're getting married in a church, it might be the church, pick the date, and then pick
But
the
it's
hall.
almost always the venue first.
Yeah. And then from there, usually they're very comfortable with their contact at the hall. Their
Right.
coordinator, whatever, their banquet manager. And they'll trust, like if they say, here are the vendors we like to work with, they're like, oh, I love her and she loves them, so in a roundabout way, I love these people too.
Right.
So yeah, we do very well with the recommended halls because there's that compatibility. And like obviously you've heard these stories too. You walk into a hall where you work a lot and they're like, oh, thank God it's you because last night the DJ or
Yes.
photographer did this, and so when it's
it's so funny to me because I always wonder, like, what are these other people doing? I always feel like obviously I'm not, I don't work for other photography studios. Like I know some people do, and that's fine. Like that's fine if you supplement that way. I don't, so I don't ever see what other studios do. But like the Bridgewater Manor, their one specifically, whenever we're there, they're like, oh, thank heavens it's you guys and not like somebody. And I'm like, what are these other people doing?
I know. Well, quick funny story for you. I was at a hall that we both know very well, and we walked in and the staff was like, oh, thank God you're here, Bob, because last night the DJ was fighting with the maitre d' because they had a dessert bar, and this DJ thought everything revolved around the music.
Okay.
When everybody plays a part in the play, right? You're very important. The hall is very
Right.
important. Everyone's important.
Some DJs have big egos.
Oh, yeah. Well, this guy refused to announce the dessert table was open in the other room because he didn't want to kill his dance floor. And they had to say it to him like 4 times. It's like, hey, dude, they paid for the desserts too.
Right. Like that's also part of the wedding.
Yeah. So the catering halls, yeah, those vendor lists are super important to us because you've got that comfort level, and the couples feel comfortable when you're on that recommended list. So yeah, we started getting a few more halls that way, and that's been our bread and butter. We've been very blessed that we don't particularly advertise. We don't do a lot of ads and things like that. I just sponsored the Mount Olive ice hockey team,
Okay.
because I like hockey, as
Right.
you can tell, Rangers in Jersey. But little things like that. But the coach of the hockey team, I did his wedding, so it was like kind of a
Right.
favor. But we've been fortunate enough to build our business through, most importantly, personal referrals, like you mentioned earlier, and the catering halls and other vendors like yourself and so forth.
Yeah, I
So-
know when people book with us, they get like their confirmation email because a lot of times it goes. I've noticed that it goes venue and then photography, and so people get like, this is the confirmation of your appointment, and if you're curious, here are some vendors we like to work with, and you're one of them. And people will call me and they'll ask, like a lot of times people ask, and I'm like, well, who are you looking at? And I always speak so favorably of you because one of the things that I noticed is you're not like a one-trick pony, right? Like some people want to feel like they're at a nightclub in Hoboken, right? Like that's what some people want, and that's cool. Like that's what.
Absolutely.
But I think for the most part, they want a little bit of Hoboken, a little bit of Sinatra, a little bit of, everybody kind of dancing together. And I feel like not only can you provide all that, but I feel like you also can read the room. Like I've been at weddings sometimes where DJs, I'm like, are you blindfolded right now? Like, can you not see that nobody's picking up what you're putting down? So I know just like from a vendor point of view, because as a photographer, we want people to have good DJs, because if there's a good DJ, there's more picture opportunities because people are dancing and having fun.
Makes your job easier.
Oh yeah, you can only take so many pictures of people standing outside smoking cigarettes and other things that maybe they don't want photographed.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's such a true thing. And one of the things that, obviously I think I'm closer to the end of my career than the beginning. I've been doing this since 1988. But one of the things I've really started appreciating, and especially since the pandemic, is the relationships. Like, to me, one of the greatest things about this job is the people I get to work with on a regular basis, such as yourself and the catering halls, and believe it or not, there's a few other photographers I do like working with as well.
Say it ain't so.
And video guys and girls and makeup artists and officiants and things like that. And I've really come to appreciate the times that we spend together. And I go, you never know when it's going to end. Like, so I'm trying to be in the moment.
I feel like this is such a weird job to have as like a full-time job, because, my husband goes to work and he's like got a crazy, he's in law enforcement. Mm-hmm. He has a very, very stressful job. So it's not that I like envy his job, but like he also has friends from work, right? And like I have people who work for me all the time, but it's like a different type of thing. We're not all in the same office together. So while I have friends from work, I don't really have friends from work, right?
Yep.
So it's one of those nice things when you go to a venue and it's like you see your work friends, like, because you don't always get to see your work friends.
Exactly. Let's do water cooler talk. You know, how was this episode last night of Game of Thrones?
Yeah, that doesn't exist for me.
Yeah, it is. And it's funny because for the longest time I had the best of both worlds, because I had a full-time job and I was doing this on the weekends. So I got to live that dichotomy life where I had that regular full-time job, the boringness of sitting at the same desk every day, and then the fun of this. And it's funny because my wife and I have talked about this over the years, where my full-time jobs were just jobs,
right?
Just a paycheck,
like not fulfilling,
right? Yeah. But what I love about what I do on the weekends, my full-time gig, is I see my results right in front of my eyes. Like when I worked insurance claims. No offense, but boring.
Yeah, that's
and no offense
very
to the
different
claims adjusters out there. I apologize, but
very different than weddings.
For me, it was just not fulfilling. It was just a paycheck. What I love is at the end of the night when someone comes up and says, "Wow, it's such a great time. Thanks, the music was great." It's like, cool.
It like makes you feel good,
right?
And it's like they become. It sounds cheesy when people say like your clients become your friends, but your clients become your friends. You're with them in the most intimate moments of their entire life. Like I don't. Maybe if you don't care about your job, it wouldn't be this. But it's like they can't not become your friends. Like you get very emotionally attached. Like for me, like very emotionally attached to their whole day, their memories and stuff. And for you, like I notice like weddings, like I feel like music makes or breaks a wedding. Like I truly, before I photographed weddings, I thought it was alcohol. I thought you needed alcohol and that's what it was. And then once I started doing weddings, I realized like, no, it's music. Yeah. Music makes or breaks a wedding. And it's just true that I tell it to every single girl, like, don't get a bad DJ, because a bad DJ will be a bad wedding.
Yeah. And one of the things that I love about it is, and you and your staff are the epitome of this. Excuse me. I love when I see a vendor enjoying what they do.
Right.
And when I watch your team work, you're out there taking pictures, but you're dancing.
Yes.
You're interacting with guests, and that's such a great thing. It shows, at least to me, it shows that the people that are sitting there watching, going, that person likes their job.
Yes.
You know,
it's a labor of love.
yeah, you're passionate about it, and you have to be in this business because I was told my wife the day I'm doing this strictly for the paycheck, day I quit because
Right.
I don't want to be that guy that's just like with the blinders on, like you were saying. I don't care what's happening out there. I'm just going to do what I need to do.
Right.
I want to see what's happening in front of my eyes, and I hope it's what the couple wants. You know?
Well, and you know what? Also, I think the day that happens is the day that you stop getting those referrals, right? Because people pick up on it. Like
Yep.
people can feel for pictures, right? I feel like if the photographer is excited, you can feel it through the lens and it comes out in the picture. And it's the same thing with the music. Like you can almost tell a DJ's like personality by the music they play, right? Like some DJs like are very into themselves, right? And you can almost like, okay, like I think maybe people want this kind of music, but this DJ's hardcore feeling this vibe and this is what he's doing because it's his show.
Yeah.
And people love you. I mean, Jim, I've worked with Jim a bunch. I can't remember his name. Oh my gosh. It was he's an older guy. He's a little bit shorter with gray hair.
Lou?
Yes,
Lou.
like Italian.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, he was one time at Perona. I was just complaining that I'm not as Perona as much as I wanted to. I think Nikki was with me. You could ask me. Lou was telling me these stories, and it was just like I couldn't. I'm like, oh my, you are a vibe, and I'm loving you.
Yeah.
Like Lou is a vibe that I'm obsessed with.
Lou is definitely a vibe. It's funny you bring that up because I've been asked so many times, and especially because I've been doing this so long, people I went to college with that I may run into now that maybe don't follow me on social media, so maybe they don't know that I work still doing this. They'll say, "Are you still DJing?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Well, aren't you sick of that music by now? And I'm like, and this is always my answer. I said, if I had a couple that said, "Bob, I want you to play Celebration 5 times in a row at my event," if the guests were enjoying it all 5 times, I don't care because it's not about me.
Right.
They're having a good time. By the way, I don't play Celebration 5 times in a row, but unless you ask me to. But you know, that's to me is what it's about. It's not about what I want to hear.
Right.
You know, it'd be U2, Beatles, and REM all night if it was about what I want to hear. I like more than that, but that's my main staples. You know, it's
See
about
me, I'm 90s gangster rap.
nothing wrong with that. Good Grammy show the other night with that
tribute
to hip hop.
Yeah, the Grammys. That's I'll take my headphones off, put my tinfoil hat on, and we'll have a different discussion that will probably get me canceled.
Exactly. But yeah, it to me, it's about not my ego or anything like that. It's about the couple,
Right.
and beyond the couple, it's also about the 150 people they invited to celebrate with
Yes.
them. But it's just such a pleasure to see people that enjoy what they do. You know.
So how did you know to like make that jump? Because you had the day job, and then you had were you still doing your day job when the other 2 guys stopped doing it with you?
Yeah. In fact, I stopped having a day job 2.5 years ago.
Shut up.
Yep.
Are you kidding me?
Swear to
How
God.
did you do this all?
I don't know. To be honest, I say that to my
Bob,
wife all the time.
I am flabbergasted by this information right now. Flabbergasted
Yeah.
by this.
Yeah.
How did you do that?
My wife will probably refute this, but maybe I'm a good multitasker because she says men can't multitask. Well, first of all, since 2009, I had really one of the coolest full-time jobs ever. I worked for a design college, three different design schools. And my job was I worked out of my house here in northern New Jersey, and I would go into high schools and give career presentations on things like photography, fashion, film, animation.
So it wasn't like a traditional.
It wasn't a traditional job. I made my own schedule, worked from home, and the beauty of that was if I had a Friday wedding, I could make my Friday either I'm going to do it as my office day and stay home and catch up on emails, or I would book a school because I was responsible for booking with the teachers directly to do the presentations in class. I'd book a school close to home that ended at 11 in the morning, so I had plenty of time to get to the wedding. Because one change that I've seen in the industry, when I first started, first of all, nobody got married. I shouldn't say nobody. Almost nobody got married at the halls when I first started back in 89, 90. People were still getting married
That's a
in the
relatively
church.
new thing.
It is. So that was a game changer because back then on a Friday, if you were getting married, your church ceremony might be 6 o'clock.
Right.
And then you'd have a 7 to 8 or 8 to 9 cocktail hour and a 9 to 1 reception.
Yeah.
So if I worked a regular full-time job, I could leave at 4:30 in the afternoon,
Right.
get to the hall, set up. Now on a Friday, as you know, ceremonies start at 4:30
Yes.
at the hall.
Yes.
And they go right into cocktail hour. Friday weddings are over at 10 o'clock, 10:30.
Yes.
So it's really hard now to have that full-time job where back then it was easier. So by me working for the design schools, I was able to negotiate my own schedule.
Right.
And it made it a lot easier to get to the wedding on time and to balance everything. But it was a lot of work because for a while my wife was helping me as my operations manager, and my brides loved her.
Right.
Like they're like, she was so pleasant because my wife's not a salesperson. She just talks to them girl to girl,
right.
Like a bride to bride. And the feedback I got, but then my wife got busy with the house and the kids and things
Especially
like that.
when they get older and they get more active.
Yep. Yeah, this activity running around here. So I kind of just took over that role again. And so I pretty much do all the office work. And then do the jobs on the weekends.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. And it's funny because I know as a DJ, my job basically ends when that last song plays. Right. But I know as a photographer,
it's different.
You still have probably 50% of your work to do, if not more, with all the editing and getting the album, the photos ready and stuff like that. So, I'm happy to have that role.
Photography
at that time.
It's definitely like a different thing. Most of the girls, we have it set up where we like offer them. So while we're happy to talk to anybody as much as they want in the planning process, like I've been doing it long enough that I'm able to help the girls like fairly efficiently. Like it takes me like it's not very difficult for me to help them with a timeline. But yeah, the after.
Yeah.
The after is a lot.
Which you guys have, and we obviously don't. So that helps a lot. And, as I've gotten further along
but
in
also
my career,
you have like you have staff to manage.
Yeah, I do.
I guess you've had the same people, though, for a while, so you can trust them.
Yeah, I've been very blessed that for the last 25 years, because we're entering our 27th year, we're in our 27th year as a company, I've had basically the same crew. Couple floating in and out, here and there, but the same core guys. Jim, Lou, Neil had been with me. They're all Star DJs guys too. Like they were.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they all cut their teeth with Star. And then the last, 6-7 years, our business has had a huge uplift with bringing in some younger gentlemen. And younger gentlemen, and I say younger gentlemen, they're 27 now, right. 28, 29. But they have a really, really good work ethic. And I know that generation gets slammed a lot for laziness and this and that. I'm on TikTok all day. Obviously, you can never generalize like that. I just think that's wrong. There are a few of them that are lazy and on TikTok. There
are some.
But these guys, I've been blessed to have them come on board because enthusiasm. They brought great enthusiasm in, but a really, really good work ethic. These guys just, and they get it sometimes when, like, if they're my assistant and I'm the MC in a wedding, they know at the end of the night, sometimes I have to go say goodbye to the bride and groom, if I haven't done that already, maybe take care of business if they owe us a balance, They're not just standing there like, oh, Bob's doing this thing. They're like, I turn around and everything's packed up. I'm like, wow.
Right.
That's
now,
great.
how do you find people? Like, because I find people through very, very strange ways. Like, I don't find people, like, I put out a thing, like, I'm interviewing photographers. Like, people will come into my lives through all different ways. And, like, obviously you have to be efficient with a camera. And we train people. But I know for myself, trustworthiness and work ethic is like the number one most important thing, because you could be you can be an amazing photographer, but if I don't know 1,000% that I can trust in you to be where you need to be and that you're going to actually like take the time to double check what the schedule says, like you're no good to me anymore. Yep. So as far as I'm concerned, like that's number one on my list. So how do you like find people? Do they?
It's ironic. I call him the trio of younger gentlemen. The main one is this young gentleman named Anthony. I met him years ago. I was subbing out all my uplighting through a lighting company. I just didn't want to go out and buy the lights and deal with them and things like that. So I did it to him. This young gentleman was 17 or 18 maybe at the time in high school working for this lighting guy. And we struck up a friendship and then slowly brought him on board. Say, hey, you want to DJ too? And he started doing that. And this guy's a work hound. I mean, he just works and works and works. He brought in the two other guys, friends of his from high school. So I got lucky with that one. I got three really, really good guys and in one swoop. I've tried, like through Facebook, I've had people reach out to me and say, hey, I'm looking to DJ. So I interviewed a couple people. To me, the trustworthiness is just like you, number one. This isn't a job where you wake up with a cough and go, oh, I can't go to work.
Right. And that's what I don't think people realize. Like, they see it like, oh, what a super fun job. And yes, it is a super fun job. But if I say I'm going to be somewhere in 2 years, I have to be there in 2 years. I've done, hey, Carissa. So Carissa and Danielle and Mary Kate and Katie. So I did a wedding for this girl, and as she was leaving her house to get into the limo, it was everything. The shot was everything. The house was in the background. The limo was in the foreground. She was coming out with her beautiful. It was everything, right? So I'm walking backwards to get this, and they had one of those curbs where the grass kind of grew over the curb just a touch. So as I'm walking backwards, I heard it. My ankle went pop, pop. So it happened, right? What am I supposed to do? We're on our way to the church. So fortunately, we passed the CVS on our way, and I just grabbed an ace bandage and an icy hot, and I put it on my ankle. And this was at 2:30, and the wedding was over at 11. And I just worked on a broken ankle, right? Because what am I supposed to do?
Right.
Now, funny story. I actually. Carissa was a bridesmaid in that wedding, and she just loved my personality, and she saw that, she's like, that's amazing. And then she booked me, and then one of Carissa's friends, Danielle, it was a very funny story when Danielle came in for her consultation, she was like, Carissa told me about how you broke your ankle and then worked another 8 hours, and I'm not saying I want you to break your ankle, but this is the kind of devotion that I need. And the people who work for my company, I'm very, very selective with who's going to be a head photographer, and I do try to pay them very well. I as far when you're showing up, you are Cherryville Photography, and it's not lost on me that they are my business, and I feel like they should be compensated for it. But also, with that compensation comes a level of responsibility, and you just have to. You totally have to comprehend how you're irreplaceable for these 8, 10, 12 hours.
Yeah. And one of the things that we do is we have certain I don't want to call them rules, but we used to do a Thursday check-in. We now moved it to Wednesday because we have so many Thursday weddings.
Right.
Where every Wednesday, so tonight, I sit down and I go through the book of business for the weekend, and we touch base with everyone working.
We do the same thing.
Yeah, you're here, you're showing up here. And
yes.
Then I also incorporate this thing where the guys text me when they get there, just so I know they're there.
Right.
Peace of mind for me.
Yes.
I mean, we just had a situation where one of our guys was booked on a Friday night wedding, and unfortunately, his mom had a massive stroke Friday morning, and we had to call up our backup system,
right?
And get one of our guys to replace him. And so life happens,
right?
But like you said, if somebody books you for December of 2024, you're going to be there in December of 2024.
Right. And not that we're heartless. I did have a photographer one time, and I was very touched that he did this because he had other things on his mind. He called me from the hospital to be like, I'm so sorry. I got checked into the hospital last night. I was hoping it was nothing. I'm still here this morning. I don't think I'm going to be able to make it this afternoon. So again, I fully comprehend that life happens, but just having people who understand, who who are going to call you from the hospital to say, I'm so sorry, can you find coverage for me? And then, of course, we have the same thing. We have like backups for our backups.
Yep.
So it's not a big deal. But yeah, and I find that when I'm working with people, a lot of times I know right away. Like I know right away if they're going to be the right type of person.
Yeah. You can usually see it in the body language and things like that, and the mannerisms and what they say and stuff. And, you know, I had to miss 3 events for the first time in over 28 years when I got COVID back.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah.
I worked with you, I think, one of your first back, and you're like, I'm so sorry. I'm just being careful. I'm not going to give you a ton of hugs right now.
Yeah. I was the abundance of caution, that term was being thrown around a lot during COVID. And it killed me, especially the first day when, you know, I couldn't really contact that bride and groom because I didn't want to bother her while she's getting her hair done or while they're doing their pictures. But I knew my guys that were showing up, Lou and Neil, were going to cover it and be great.
Right.
It was tough, but it is a job that you have to be there. You
Yeah.
know? And you have to also be able to put everything else going on in your life on the back burner.
Yes.
You're having the worst day in the world. Does not matter. One of the things that was drilled into my head by the great Paul Geiger. Hi, Paul, if you ever see this. Paul was one of the guys at Star that I really emulated. I stole so much from Paul. Borrowed. But I respected what he did. I thought he was so good on the mic and so smooth and so good with the clientele and things that I said, that's what I want to be like. And Paul taught me a lot of things, and so did the other guys at Star, John and Rick and Danny, Dan the Man, God rest his soul. Things like, you know, and this is back before cell phones and before computers when we were using vinyl.
Right.
You know, we all wore wristwatches to keep time. They're like, when you're up there working, don't be looking at your watch.
Yes.
Because they always said someone out there is always looking at you.
Yes.
And it'll look like you're bored. When's this over? If you're tired and you have to yawn, don't yawn in front of it. Like, duck under the table, turn around, you know.
I hold my camera up.
Yeah, whatever it takes,
because,
right?
Because, like, I'm not bored by the wedding, but sometimes if you've been working for 12 hours on your feet running around, like, you can't help it. By the time 11 o'clock rolls around, you start feeling sleepy.
Yeah. So little things like that they taught me. They also taught me, you know, I wasn't very good at names early on. And I know we were talking about this earlier. One of the things that I did when I first started, obviously, again, pre-GPS, you know, I used to keep index cards of all the halls that I would work at. I'd write the name of the hall, the phone number, the directions, and then on the back I would write the maitre d's name or the bank manager's name. So when I was working there 3 months from now, I could pull the card out and put it in my car and bring it to keep directions. But I'd also walk in and go, hey, George. And George would be like, oh, yeah, this guy remembered. You know,
yes.
Like, and it's funny. I just got one of the greatest compliments ever. And it wasn't told directly to me. We were working 2 jobs at Prona Farms. I was in the main building, and one of my guys, Anthony, was in the barn. And Anthony was working with this videographer, Kurt, who's been around forever. And I've known Kurt forever. And Kurt said to Anthony, he goes, Bob remembers everything and everyone. You can mention, oh, yeah, that banquet manager. And I'm like, I don't know. I just do.
You just do.
Like, one of the things that was also drilled into me, and I felt this was very important in the wedding industry, especially as an MC, never, ever say the word bride and groom over the mic at a wedding. Like, it's one of the things that's drilled into our company's head.
Okay.
It's always, or bride and bride, or groom and groom, obviously.
Right.
You know, it's always Lisa and George, or Anne-Marie and Julie, or Greg and Tony, so that you customize it and personalize it.
Right.
And one of the things that I'm part of these Facebook groups, and in one of them, there's at least twice a month a DJ, and this is pretty cool because these are DJs from around the globe, so I get to see what events are like in other parts of the world, not only the other parts of the country. But twice a month, someone will post, hey, you know, I have a same-sex wedding coming up. What do I do to make sure I don't say bride and groom? And my response is always,
call them by name.
You shouldn't be saying that at an opposite-sex wedding, so you wouldn't worry about it at a same-sex wedding. You know? So, like, these little things that were drilled into my head, I try and drill into my guys' heads. Like, you know, just make it customized, make it personal, so it doesn't feel like you're just the DJ that's there. Right.
We do something similar. Like, so obviously, you know, we're not announcing names, but like I always tell everybody, like I don't lie. I really don't. I really just don't lie. I never have. So I always tell people, like, when you're working with people, like, always be genuine. Like, even if you're working and there's not like, maybe it's not like your favorite style of dress, or maybe it's not your favorite style of flowers, like, find something that you truly love and then talk about that. Like, don't ever be fake.
Right.
Because people are knowing you're going to be fake. Like, you always, like, find something that you're excited about, and then you can share that with them. Because I feel like people pick up on that instantly.
Absolutely. Enthusiasm. Like, again, it goes back to that. If you're just doing this for the paycheck, going through the motions, people are going to see that.
Right. Like, I might go to weddings every single weekend, but this is the only day they're getting married.
Yep.
And it's one of those things where, like, I say it to people. I say, like, I'm not digging ditches, right? Like, let's face it. It's my job to go to parties and run around with a camera. Like, that's an amazing way to make money. So
Yes.
I'm not, like, crying the blues that I have some physically difficult job. But I say, like, sometimes you don't realize, like, it can just be, like, mentally tiring, right? Because nobody wants, like, a ho-hum photographer.
Right.
So, like, you have to... Well, first, you just should be, but, like, you have to be very excited, right? And then you just also have to understand, like, when you arrive, this is a girl who's probably got a bundle of nerves, right? Like, she's got a bundle of nerves. There's a lot going on. So you, like, have to pick up on people's cues, right? Like, some people are going to be, like, a little bit anxious, and they're gonna need that space, right?
Yep.
So you have to, like, always be on. Like, you can never not be on. Like, you're always got to be like, this is the greatest thing in the world. And I mean, weddings are, like, it really is, like, awesome, but you can't have a fight with your kid as you're getting out of the door and then be in a bad mood. Like,
Right.
It doesn't,
No.
and especially in our industry, one bad review could kill you.
Yep.
So you literally can't have an off day.
You got to check it at the door, because they're depending upon you to help them get to that. Like you said, some couples are super nervous, some are super laid back, some are high strung, some are carefree, and you've got to be able to pick up on how they're feeling, and then rework yourself or reimagine yourself sometimes to be, I got to be extra careful. I got to go over more with this one. And some couples are like, yeah, whatever, Bob. Do your
some
thing.
are, and the other thing that I tell people is, like, just recognize the fact that, for better or for worse, no one's going to see you after today. So if something goes wrong, they're not going to blame their mom. They're going to blame you.
Yep.
Because we're the strangers that they're never going to see. And it's one of the things that I tell my head photographers, like, you just have to be super, super conscious of that they're not going to blame their best friends. They're going to look for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Don't give them any reason to be that person that gets blamed.
Exactly. Because, like you said, if something, God forbid, goes wrong, it's everybody's fault.
Right.
They're gonna want to blame everyone.
I'm so crazy about it. I'm so crazy about that. I even, like, tell and we are very, very fortunate. We really, really do have great clients. But you'll go to a wedding and there could just be who knows? Maybe it's Uncle Drunky in the corner who's just acting inappropriate, right?
Yes.
And I say, like, don't even text the other photographer while you're there, like, something disparaging, because you never know who's looking over your shoulder. I'm like, don't even do it from the car. Like, roll your windows up, start the car, and then call me. And you can complain about everything that you want as long as you want. But just, you always have to know that at any point in time, somebody could literally be looking over your shoulder.
Funny little story for you. Years ago, one of the guys I worked with at Star DJs told me a story that the wedding ended. They thought all the guests were gone. And they were in the bathroom changing out of their suits into their street clothes for loadout, and they're both in a stall, and they're talking about what happened.
Yes.
And there was a guest still in the bathroom, and they were, like, mortified. It's like, don't
wait until you're in your car with the windows up and you're on the highway. I've had it where, like, it's a long day and you're with like 200 different people, right? Somebody's probably going to do something. I've personally had things where like, whew, and I'm like going to text my husband like, and then like I'll just look and I'm like, oh, there's a guest at my window, right? Like, cause it's like a really weird job because while, like you were talking about, like one of the cool things about it is you get very, very close with people. But like on the flip side of the coin, like people also feel very, very close with you. So it's not like a normal job where there's kind of like that barrier. Like I'm the worker and you're the person coming to me for work. Like that barrier kind of doesn't exist, which I think is like good.
Yeah.
It's good.
But it can have its downsides.
Right.
Too.
But you also just have to be like very, very conscious of that like there's not that barrier and people will just be there.
Oh yeah. Quick story. I was doing a wedding at one of our favorite catering halls. I won't mention the name, but anyway, I'm standing there at my console mixing the music. People are dancing, and the photographer was standing right there talking to me. And this woman comes up, this guest, and she's like complaining about me. What are you playing this stuff for? Nobody likes it. And I kind of like look away from her and look at the dance floor. That's pretty packed. I'm like, okay, nobody likes it. They're just dancing out of obligation. But she goes, well, can you play something different? I said, well, this is kind of what Judy and Fred wanted. And she goes, well, don't listen to them. I'm like, oh, so your business advice to me is not to listen to the couple that hired me.
Don't listen to the people who are paying me.
Right. And just listen to some random guest at table number 8. I didn't take that advice.
Yeah, that's probably poor business advice. It's funny. So you're like super cool to work with. You're amazing to work with. Some DJs, like there's no nice way to say this. They're just douchebags. Like there's no nice way to say it. And so for me, sometimes girls will have us stay all night. Sometimes girls will have us leave at the end of cake cutting, right? Like it's just a thing that exists in the world. And I always like try to relate that information to the DJ ahead of time. Like, hey, FYI, they have us leaving like at this time. It should be plenty enough time to do cake cutting. But can we like 10 o'clock, right? Like that's it. So can we do the cake cutting at like 9:40 just to make sure that we're there? And some DJs are just so awful about it. Like the staff will be like, yeah, that sounds perfect. And they just like won't do it. One time, like, and actually it was a terrible experience, which turned into a good experience because I related it to all my photographers now. I had a DJ who just was like, yeah, we can't do that. And I'm like, well, she really wanted us to capture the cake cutting.
Right.
And this is what she wanted. And he's like, yeah, I don't know what to tell you. Like, we can't do it then. And I'm like, I'm thinking in my head, like, okay, so you're either telling me I have to go tell the bride she has to randomly come up with more money, or you're telling me I have to work for free. Because if I'm going to stay late,
right.
Like, because people don't realize, like, some people might be like, who cares? What's 15 minutes of your night? But it's not 15 minutes of your night. Like, that's 200 more pictures that needs to be edited, right? So, and I don't appreciate that. Like, it'd be one thing. Now, I'm not heartless. Sometimes things happen and things go over. And if it's through no fault of ourselves, of course we're staying an extra 15 minutes. We would never not do that.
Yep.
But if it's because a DJ is just telling me an hour ahead of time that this is not a possibility, so work for free or have the bride be pissy with you. So he was so awful that I'm like, right, like, this is not an argument I'm having. So I just went up to the bride and I will never trash talk another vendor to a couple.
Right.
Ever.
Right.
So I just went up to the bride and I was like, hey, I just wanted to mention something to you real quick. I know that it was important to you. We captured the cake cutting and I was just chatting with the DJ and he was saying like it might be a little bit tricky to work it in there. And I know that like brides a lot of times will have a lot of pull and I know this is something that you wanted. So I don't know if you just want to mention it. I don't know if you just want to mention it to the DJ that you wanted to do it at this time. And she's like, okay, yeah, that sounds great. And she walks over, and then, of course, the DJ was like, big smiles. He's like, oh, yeah, that's no problem at all. So now it's just something I tell all my head photographers. Do not get into this fight. If the bride hired you and this is the timeline and the DJ says they can't, like, don't disparage the DJ. Just calmly, like, say, hey, I just wanted to mention something to you even with the venue. Like, sometimes venues will be, like, weird about certain things that the bride thought they could have, and then the venue says they can't. I'm like, don't get involved. Just mention to the bride, like, hey, I just wanted to mention this to you. I know this was important to you. They're saying it's a little bit tricky. I don't know if you might want to mention it, that you're still interested. And I'm like,
yeah.
I'm not, and it's so funny to me because while I like taking pictures, like, this isn't my request. This is the bride's request. Right. Like, the bride wants this to happen. So you're pretty much telling the bride she can't have what you paid her to do.
Yeah.
Which is, like, so strange.
It brings back that point of training again. You know, I always give full props and credit to the guys at Star that trained me and the guys that I worked with. Not only the ones that trained me, but then I would go out and work with other guys as their assistant or whatever. And one of the things that they drilled into our heads was always be a team player. You know, always, and you've probably noticed this with me, I am always coming to the photographers, videographers, during cocktail hour, before, all right, we're doing intros first. You know, if there's something special, I let you know. Like, and this is something I relate to my couples. I'm like, this is why we work with everybody, because at the end of the day, you and I don't work for each other.
Right.
We work for the same couple.
Right.
But we have to work together for them, and that's
right.
so important. You know, like, for instance, if a bride and groom tell me, we're really shy, we don't want to be out there long for first dance, so, like, after a minute, can you get everyone up to join us? That's something I tell you during cocktail hour because that affects your job.
Yes.
You're only going to have 50 seconds to get photos of just a two.
And you've done that with me personally. I've been there when you've done it, like, hey, just FYI, they're cutting it short and having everybody to join. So if you need to get stuff, get it in the beginning.
Well, I learned a lesson years and years and years ago. I was doing a wedding up in Vernon, I think the old Playboy Club or the ski lodge or whatever. And I remember distinctively telling this photographer, hey, listen, they've got a huge bridal party. And this is back in the days when it was usually just the bridal party joined you, not guests. And the photographers would go around and take pictures of all the couples. And you still do that sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you don't. It depends. But I knew that this guy was going to do that. So I told him ahead of time, I said, it's a huge bridal party. The song isn't very long. So, like, work quickly. I invite the bridal party on halfway through the song, and I'm watching the photographer stand over there leaning against the wall, like, and then with about 45 seconds left in the song, he comes over to me and goes, how much time's left in the song? I said, 35 seconds. He goes, can you rewind it? I got to get pictures of it. I swear to God. I was like,
what was he doing?
I said, sir, I told you ahead. I don't know what he was doing because this was pre-iPhone, so he wasn't, like, updating his Facebook status.
I even tell my photographers, like, if they're... So sometimes, like, they'll just be downtime, right? Like, they'll just be downtime. Or maybe, like, everybody's eating and it's the same 3 people on the dance floor. And, like, sometimes it, like, can become uncomfortable if there's, like, 2 photographers just... And I tell people, I'm like, don't ever just be doing nothing. Like, don't just stand there doing nothing. Like, it's one thing, like, if you're chatting with the DJ for a minute while people are coming out. But don't just be doing nothing. Like, do something. And even, like... If you have to take a break, because you're standing, right? Like, our business, you're literally standing the whole time. Like, I understand sometimes you just need to, like, get off your feet, right? Like, because your feet hurt. Like, you need to sit for a moment. Like, even, you know, in factories in China, they probably get, like, a 5-minute break. And I say, like, if you need to take a break, that's fine. But, like, go do it someplace private.
Right.
Go do it someplace private because you don't want to, like... You're being paid to take pictures. You're not being paid to sit around. I even do it like when they serve dinner. A lot of times, and venues, if you're listening, serve the vendors first so that we're done eating. Because if you serve us last, the dance floor opens back up and then we can't eat. So any venues that are listening, serve us first. Serve us bad food first. We don't care. Just don't serve us last. But so a lot of times, you know, they do always serve us last. And once the music starts playing again, I can see nobody's dancing yet, but I don't feel comfortable, like, not working when the dance floor is on. So I'll always, like I don't ask my staff to do it. Like, when I'm working, I'll always tell them, like, please take your time, enjoy yourself, but I'm going to go back out there because I'm not going to just be sitting down here while something's going on. Because, you know, like, they're paying you to do a job. Like, so do your job.
Right. And one thing I've always told all of my couples when I'm first meeting them before they even book with us is I always say, we don't have anything in our contract about a meal being required.
Neither do we.
Yeah. But I always say, make sure your photographer and videographer get fed before us. Because or over us, even if that's the case, because your day starts, and it's obviously changed a little bit without church ceremonies. When you have a church ceremony, there's time in between because of travel.
Yes.
It extends your day even further. When everything's at one spot, it condenses it a little bit, but still, you might be getting to the hall at 12 o'clock for a 5 o'clock ceremony or a 4:30 ceremony, whatever the timeline might be. And I know timelines change with you guys because some people want you longer, some people want you shorter.
Well, with first looks, we very frequently, if they're doing a first look all on site, a lot of times we start 3 hours prior to the ceremony. If it's off site, we might be starting 5 hours prior to the ceremony.
Yeah. So your day is
Long.
really long. And during cocktail hour, you might be doing family photos because you couldn't do them.
We don't always get to eat during cocktail.
Exactly. So I literally drill into their heads that make sure photographers and videographers get fed. Because
thank you.
Well, you're welcome. I think that's important. And obviously I can afford to skip a meal or two. It's not a big deal. I married an Italian who loves to cook. But
oh, my husband's going to come find your wife then. He married an Italian who's a terrible cook.
My wife's really good. It's incredible.
I have 2 daughters that are actually really good cooks, though.
There you go. There you go.
My progeny
There
can
you go.
feel that.
Delegation. That's the important thing in life.
That's what we're saying. Become a business owner so you can delegate and have your children cook dinner for you.
Exactly. But yeah, to me, that's important. And one of the things that you just were talking about is always being busy, or at least looking busy. That's in my job. Sometimes it's a little bit easier because obviously every song is different. I'm mixing different songs. I'm not playing, like a pre-mix for 35 minutes, unless it's dinner time and we walked away. But I just worked with a photographer recently who was literally standing right off the side of the dance floor in front of everybody, just standing there like texting on her phone. And
and you know what? That's the biggest challenge that I've found, because I have people who are much, much younger than me who have incredible work ethics. So I know for a fact they're not being lazy. There's just nothing going on, and it's one of the really big challenges. Like, it's actually like I always do like a recap, like before the season starts. Like, okay, this is what I found from last year. This is what we're going to focus on moving forward for this year, because things always change. But that's the big thing. Like, I'm not saying you can't check your cell phone, but you can't check your cell phone when anyone is there.
Right.
Because I had a mother of the bride who was prickly about many, many things. But all of our couples get client access sites, and the client access site, all the photographers have that same information in their phone. So all of the notes are on the phone because it's a live site. It automatically updates. And I had the photographer like literally checking her notes, like confirming. And she was like, yeah, she was just sitting there playing on her phone. I'm like, no, she was looking at the information, because this is also a little computer.
Right.
But it's challenging because I grew up without smartphones, right? So like when I grew up, it would be like incredibly insulting to have a phone in your hand and looking at it while somebody talked to you. Like, it's just not a thing that I do. Now, people, 20 years younger than me, I don't think it's because they're being disrespectful. I just think it's like a different thing. And they don't realize that even though all of the guests who are here that are your age, like, totally comprehend it, the parents are still of that different mindset that like, oh, we're paying you to work and you're just playing on your phone.
It's such an amazing thing. There's a hall we work at sometimes that has a mirror right behind where we sit up.
That's the worst.
Yeah. And I was told the story. It wasn't our company, but like we walked in and they said, oh yeah, last week the DJs were they had 2 laptops set up, and they were, I'm going to break out one of my favorite SAT words, surreptitiously, secretly watching, thank you, Mr. Collins and Mr. Heike, my high school English teachers. They were watching a sports event on one of the laptops. Didn't realize
that everybody could see.
Could see it in the mirror. It's like, you never know.
That's probably like the biggest thing. Like, you just have to realize that unless you're in a bathroom stall with the door closed, you have no privacy at all. Yeah. And you're not even you're not even out in public. You're with drunk people who have like, it's so funny, like, you know, there's all this political correctness now, and, you know, for better or for worse, it's here, right? Like, it's here, right? Like, society and culture is changing, whether you like it or not. But when people get drunk, they forget most of that.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the things that people have said to me, like, lovely, upstanding, wonderful people, when they get drinks in them, like, that's all gone now. I had one guy be so wildly graphically inappropriate.
Ooh.
Yeah, like graphically inappropriate. And I ran into him at like another wedding, and I'm like, I couldn't place it, right? Because you meet so many people, and I couldn't place why he looked familiar, and I'm like, gosh, you look familiar, and I can't place it. He's like, yeah. So do you remember this wedding? He was like, I was that guy. And he goes, oh no, it gets better. I go to church with you, and I see you every Sunday, and my husband's a cop and he's a cop, and there's kind of like, a cop would never disrespect another cop's wife, right? And he's like, yeah, it gets even better. I am also a cop, and I know that your husband's a cop, and I see you with your husband every single Sunday. And he's like, I'm just so very sorry. So this obviously is like a decent, upstanding person. He's not some scumbag, but like when people get drunk,
Yep.
it flies out. So like you can't believe that people are going to be respectful.
I got a quick funny story for you, and I'm going to tell you the whole because it's important to the context of the story. David's Country Inn. Heather and Jeff's wedding, I think. Luke. Heather and Jeff Luke. Don't ask me why I remember that. Don't ask me what I had for lunch yesterday, but I remember that.
Okay.
This was like 5 years ago.
Bob remembers everything.
Yeah, I do. I kind of do. You're right, Kurt. I do remember a lot. Anyway, make a long story longer. This woman comes up. I love that line. I stole it from my friend Pat. Woman comes up to us early in the night. 30-something-year-old woman. She asked for Baby Shark. We're like, I'm looking around for her child. Like, you know, I don't see a child with her. I'm like, okay. We ended up not being able to get to it. This couple were huge Springsteen fans.
Okay.
Like huge. We played like 6 Springsteen songs during the night between ceremony and reception. And their last song of the night, they wanted Born to Run.
Okay.
We start Born to Run. We're set up at David's underneath the old balcony that
Yes.
used to be there. And I'm standing off to the side of our setup, and my assistant Anthony is working the uplights to the side. So no one's directly behind the DJ table, but we're both within a couple feet. And I'm pumping up the crowd because they're going nuts.
Right.
This girl, we see her coming over. And she walks up to our facade. Now, facade is something we put up in front of our setup that kind of blocks all the wires and makes it look a little pretty. And she reaches over, and I'm going to clean this up, but she yells, "You didn't play my effing song," Baby Shark, by the way, and closes my laptop.
No, she did not. No, she didn't.
She did.
Are you kidding me?
Now, when you close the laptop,
Everything stops.
baby, the song stopped. Like, everyone's like, I'm like, Anthony, my lighting guy, my assistant who's working the lights, goes, "What the?" You know? And the woman is now like, you could see she's horrified.
Right, like she just realized what she did.
Yep. I quickly flipped the laptop open, and it was probably 3 seconds that the music was stopped. But we were born to run. It starts again. The song starts again. Now you know why I'm a DJ, not a singer. Anthony's looking like, what? And I'm like, I'm looking like, why?
Why would you do that?
This was her excuse. And this is where the alcohol comes in. She looks up at the balcony 7 feet above her head. She goes, I tripped over the balcony. And I'm like, what? You tripped over something 7 feet above your head? So, yeah. you stay in this long enough, you'll see it all.
That's hilarious. So I have one story. It's my favorite story. I tell it to everybody. I feel like there's two people in the world. People who think drunk people are hilarious and people who think drunk people are annoying. I think they're hilarious. So this is like my favorite story in the entire world. And I won't say the wedding that he was at because it was one of those weddings where you get like a friend group and you like run into them all over. So he had seen me. And, I'm friendly at weddings, right? Like, I'm always, like, dancing and having a good time. And then at some point in time, so I have, like, a baby face, right? And this was even 10 years ago, so I looked even younger. So, like, he didn't realize that now I'm in my 40s, then I was in my 30s. So he was, like, shocked, right? Like, he's like, what? Like, I think he was a frat boy. Like, he had only graduated college, like, a couple years before. And, there's the blonde photographer. And I guess, like, maybe he didn't recognize. I always wear my wedding band. Like, I'm not, right? So he's like, wait, you're how old? I'm like, yeah. And I have, like, 3 kids, too. He's like, wait, but you're hot. And I'm like, no. I'm like, thank you. He goes, no, you're hot enough to be a lesbian. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Now, he was a frat boy, so I think he's like thinking like frat boys, what they watch, right, late at night. And I'm like, my life is complete now. I've won. This is the greatest thing I've ever heard from anybody at a wedding, and I'm just so happy. Yeah, so I'm hot enough to be a lesbian.
You got to put that on T-shirts and market it.
I should, right? Like, hot enough to be a lesbian, as per New Jersey frat boys. Yeah. But now, this guy would never say that to me in polite company.
Right.
We would never do that to me.
No.
But get alcohol and dancing involved, it's hilarious.
All bets are off at that
point. All bets are off.
It is funny how our job we see some of the best in people and some of the worst in people, and usually the worst is because of the open bar.
Yeah.
Which obviously I'm a friend of the open bar for the sense that not just because I'm Irish, but because if the guests have a couple of cocktails,
it makes it more fun.
They might dance a little bit more than if they didn't have a couple of cocktails.
We call it the drunken shenanigans.
Yeah.
We say, because when girls are like wondering, should we stay for the last hour, right? Like after the cake cutting, should we stay for the last hour? And I tell everybody, half of our girls are like, no, you're fine. Like, you've been here all day. Like, it's just not something, we care that much for. And then the other half of the girls are like, no. The drunken shenanigans, once our older guests leave, because you see how it is. Like, the older guests will start leaving after cake cutting. Yep. And that's when a lot of the younger guests, they really let their hair down and they're working it, right? They're working it because grandma went home and they don't have to worry about getting in trouble for it. And yeah, we call it the drunken shenanigans.
And you're right. That usually, most times it happens the last hour. Sometimes
earlier.
But yeah. I just did one at David's where the groom is very much into heavy metal.
Okay.
And it's funny. There's a gentleman that works in the kitchen at David's named Jim, and Jim's a great guy, and he does a lot there. He's dishwashing. He does maintenance. He's setting up, breaking down.
Jack of all trades.
Jack of all trades. He's a really great guy.
A Jim of all trades.
Jim of all trades, yeah. So a lot of times when I first get to David's, because we're there a lot, I walk back into the kitchen first before I even load in. Hey, everybody, how you doing? And Jim's always like, can you play some Pantera for me tonight? And I'm like, Jim, it's a wedding,
Probably not.
Yeah, probably not. Well, this one particular wedding, when I was talking to the couple, a month before, the bride's like, Dave's into, heavy metal. I'm going to send you some songs. She goes, Bob, I want you to wait till the last half hour because the old people will be gone. She goes, and give them 15 minutes. That's it, just 15 minutes. Okay. They send over the list. Now, Deanna, I like to think that I am pretty well-versed in music. I had never heard of any of these bands.
Okay.
Like after the burial, ready for the autopsy. And it was like that screamo stuff.
Yes.
So I downloaded a bunch of the songs and I listened to them and I'm kind of like, where? So I reiterated with the bride beforehand. I said, last half hour, right? She goes, yep. She goes, 15 minutes. I got to David's that day. I walked into the back in the kitchen. I said, Jim, tonight is your night. I said, tonight is the one night that come out at about 11:30 and hopefully you'll be in your glory because you're going to finally hear some stuff that you want. But yeah, I mean, sometimes you got to work in stuff that you might not normally work in.
Right.
And I'm thankful that the bride was understanding.
Yeah.
It wasn't her thing, but she
Right. That happens to us every so often. Every so often, girls will want pictures that, like, in my professional opinion, like, there's no universe that this isn't going to look cheesy in. Like, the universe that this is going to look good in doesn't exist. But, like, they're super hyped about it, right? They're super hyped about it. And I'm not a fool. There could be things that I like that she's like, that is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And you have very, very bad taste. So, it's one of those things. So then it's like, okay, right. Like, I'm going to do my research. I'm going to go on Pinterest and look up every which way this picture has ever been done so that I could do it right. Because sometimes you're just like, and, like, you can offer, like, and a lot of times girls will, like, if they want something weird, they'll, like, ask my opinion.
Right.
And I'll tell them, like, your exact vision may not work for, you know, XYZ, right? But, like, we could do it like this, and it'll and for the most part, people really like it. But sometimes people just, like, all right, so this is a picture that I don't like. I don't like this picture. I'm sorry if you're a girl who does like this picture. I don't. I hate the bouquets surrounding the face. I don't like that picture.
Yep.
But, like, sometimes people want it, right? Like, okay, super cool. Like, you're my boss, and I'm going to do whatever you want. And then you do it, and you just do it in the nicest way possible to make it look perfect. Because I know that there's things in my personal life that I do that people would be like, you're an idiot.
Right. That brings up a question I want to ask you. Have you ever had a bride say, I saw this on Pinterest, can you recreate it? And if they do say that, does that offend you? Do you like...
Yeah, people ask for it all the time. In fact, when people have their client access site, there's a spot for them to copy and paste their Pinterest must-have pictures, their Pinterest board. So I'm never offended by it. One of the things that I'm super conscious about in wedding photography is, like, so I've been doing it almost 20 years, but I don't ever want to look like a wedding photographer that's been doing pictures for 20 years.
Right.
Like, I don't ever want to look dated. So I'm always looking at other people's work, because while I think that we're good photographers, like, there's pictures that someone else will take that I'll see, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, this is incredible. And one of the nice things, because I hand edit all of the pictures, all of my photographers know, like, we have, like, general types of things that we always like to do, but I also encourage all of my photographers, like, by all means, if you see something that you think is going to be good, do it.
Right.
Like, do it. Like, please don't ever have me stifle your creativity. And sometimes, like, someone will do a picture and I'm like, oh my gosh, and I'll actually screenshot it and send it to all my head photographers and be like, this is a picture that I want everybody doing. And the same thing with brides. Like, if you turn around, that picture, right, you might have to turn the other way. That one right there, that was a picture that a bride saw on Pinterest that she wanted. And I loved it so much that it's now, like, a picture we try to take whenever we can. So I encourage it because, like, every picture that I've ever taken, even if I, like, came up with it, I didn't invent it, right? Like, I saw something similar and maybe we put our twist. Maybe we didn't put our twist. Like, some girls. So I would say half of our girls come to us because, like, they see our versatility, they see that we're professionals, and they're like, you know what? I don't know. Like, what do I want? That. Do that. That's what I want, right? And then the other half of our girls, I think they, like, see our versatility and know we can give them exactly what they want, and they'll have, like, Pinterest board 1,000 pages long. And, like, sometimes we get to the pictures where, like, we moved organically through like what we can move through, and it's like, right, so now I still got these 10 images left and they're introducing you in 20 minutes, so we got 10 minutes to rapid fire through, like, these visions of yours. And I like it because a lot of times, like, I'll see stuff and I'm like, yeah, this is amazing. I love this picture, and I'm totally stealing it. We do it with videographers a lot. Videographers, because of the way they shoot, like, they see things differently than we do.
Yep.
And they do stuff with, like, detail shots that, like, I'm not shy about it. I'll see videographers set stuff up, and I'm like, oh, I'm totally stealing this and doing this every wedding.
Yeah. Well, classic example, we did a wedding up at Prona Farms a couple weeks ago, and the bride and groom wanted to do the private last dance. So we got everyone out of the room.
That's like a new thing.
It is a new thing. we got everyone out of the room. Perona is good with this. They get their staff out, and then.
How does that work? Because this is like a very, very new thing. Do they make all the guests leave?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I used to
a private last dance. So you have a wedding. There's the last dance. A lot of times everybody's like super hype, like, oh, it's the last dance. A new trend is having a private last dance where the bride and groom are alone in the reception hall and have the last dance just by themselves. So that's what I'm like super curious about logistically how that works.
Yeah, and I apologize for not explaining what that is. I'm so used to just
talking to other wedding people.
Exactly. Yeah. Sometimes I used to lie to the guests, like. Not lie, fib.
Right.
Hey, they're going to do a spark or a send-off, so we need everybody outside.
Because everybody wants to watch.
Right.
You can't get people to go away.
Exactly. And if you don't fib to them, they won't leave the room. So,
no, they won't leave the room.
And I hate
I've had sparkler send-offs where like the venue, like not even me, like the venue's like this needs to be done at 10 and people are so drunk and like they just don't understand, like not in a mean way. I think I get away with a lot because I'm this tiny little blonde who smiles a lot. So I can like forcibly talk to people, but if I smile while I do it, like I seem cute and not mean.
Right.
But I've like literally gone up to people who just wouldn't leave and like put my hand on the small of the back, like, okay, we're walking this way now. Like it's herding cats.
Well, yeah. And that's where it's tough because the alcohol is present. But I would sometimes fib to the crowd and say, and I would often use the photographer as an excuse. I'd say, guys, we only have the photographer for another 10 minutes, so we need you out.
Yes.
You know, and it gets the room empty. Well, we were at Perona. And what I always do is we start the song and then we leave because it's a private last dance. I'm not even in the room, you know. But the photographers and the video, they did something really cool. They took this shot where they took my clipboard that I keep all my information on. They took my microphone while we were out of the room and one or maybe our pen or something. They laid it on, arranged it on the floor and then took a photo of the couple dancing.
Oh, that's super cool.
It was like, I was like, that's a cool shot.
Yeah, that is a cool shot.
Unique.
I'm totally stealing that if we ever do a private last dance.
Please do. And feel free to steal my clipboard. It's your clipboard. So yeah, like those type of things. Well, are you seeing people asking for the speed pictures thing? And by the way, speed pictures is something where the bride and groom literally go to each table and the premise is the photographers have one song to get a shot with the bride and groom with every single table. A little cheat code here. We will repeat the song if necessary.
Ooh.
So that you don't look like fools that you weren't able to get it done because it's hard to do sometimes. But are you seeing a lot of people doing the speed pictures?
I had coming up, yes, we have done one of it, and it actually, like, as far as we're concerned, like, people think it's hard for the photographers. It's super easy for me because we're always working all the time anyway. So what a lot of times people do, they'll always be like a helpy helperson.
Helpy helperson. I'm stealing that. I'm learning so much today.
Helpy helperson. They'll always be like a helpy helperson. So the first group will be lining up, and then I'll see it, and I'll be like, go get that table going.
Yep.
And you know what I think it is? Me and all of our photographers, like, I always tell people, like, you always have to be nice, but you have to be firm. So we're very, very good at, like, when people go, I'm like, all right, everybody stand up. Let's go. Look this way. Don't overthink it. Look this way and smile. And I always tell people it is amazing what you can get away with if you smile while you say it. Like, if I had a grumpy face and I said it, people would just think I was a B word. But I'm like, you've probably seen me do it. Like, sometimes people just don't want to listen, and I'm just like, we're waiting on you, buddy.
Right.
Everybody's waiting on you.
Yep.
But I say it with a smile, and it, like, comes across like, oh, that little blonde girl.
Yeah. The one that's hot enough to be a lesbian.
Yes.
I'm forever remembering that one now. I had this conversation with another female photographer, and I said, your job is really hard because, like, I kind of come in, and I'm just the fun guy. I'm providing the soundtrack and all that stuff. You have to be that person that you have to be good cop and bad cop at times. Like,
yes.
Especially during formal photos. Because, let's face it, the bridal party does not want to be standing there taking pictures, but they have to, and some of them are drunk by now or whatever. So you've kind of got to balance that between being like, hey, we got to get this stuff done.
You can curse. You can curse.
And you got to keep it fun. So it's a very hard dichotomy, another SAT word, thank you, Mr. Heike and Mr. Collins, that you have to deal with. Like
Yes.
being that good cop and bad cop. It's very difficult. And
Yeah,
I don't envy you guys on that.
You know what? So some people think it's honestly not hard if you just say, like, I could be like, look this way, and it sounds mean, or I could be like, look this way, and like, yeah. So
Yeah.
I think it's more like if you have the confidence that you know what you're talking about, then you're not like scared to tell people. But
Yeah.
like, just smile while you're saying it.
Kids, that's the lesson of the day. Just smile. Because
smile.
It's true. It's so true because
I've had it with DJs. Like, I'll have like some DJs. This is a well-known DJ, so I won't say his name. And I actually have like a great relationship with him personally. But the one photographer who used to work with me, who isn't anymore, she couldn't stand him, right? Like, she couldn't stand him. And I found, like, even like working with other vendors, like sometimes like we need to do something that's not in line with what the DJ wanted, but like the bride really wants it. So like I could go up to the DJ and be like, well, we're doing this now because it's what they want. Or I could be like, do you mind if we do this really quick?
Yeah.
Like, is that okay? Like, is that? And it's amazing if you just are nice to people, they'll be nice back.
Absolutely. It's funny, talking earlier about how I always like to keep everyone in the loop because we're all working for the same two people. That was drilled into my head through the Star Days, and I've continued it. And one of the ways that I judge the other vendors is, especially photographers and videographers, and a lot of times, like you said, your job is done at a certain point. How many pictures of the drunk shenanigans can you get? Like they're all the same. So
yeah, it gets to a point where it's literally the same 10 people on the dance floor,
and you're 8, 9, not including travel hours into your day. So you guys sometimes leave earlier than we do. But I always judge that photographer, videographer. Do they come and say goodnight?
Do they not all say goodnight to
Oh.
you?
Some of them walk right by, and this is after, and I'm not.
Don't they chitty chat with you? Like, you feel like you become friends with people.
Some do, some don't.
Like, even DJs that I don't know. Like, I'm always like, I don't know. I'm obviously I'm a chatty Cathy, but like all of our staff, like, you just like you're chatting with the person all night, and you always I always say, oh, thank you so much. Like, it was great working with you guys.
Yeah, and that was drilled into me back. Remember, I was talking about the index cards. Like, I always, at the end of the night, go up to the maitre d'. And I still do this 34 years later. Thanks so much. Everything was great. Thank you for your help. Like, even if they didn't help me, just,
right.
It's the thing to do. And people remember that. And I remember those photographers that don't say goodbye after.
It's so funny. I didn't realize that not everybody does that.
No, they don't. It's funny. The girl that was just texting a couple of weeks ago all night, my assistant and I were talking about it. Like, she's not going to say goodbye. He's like, no, not a single chance. She came over and said goodbye.
Oh, did she?
All right on you.
Oh, okay.
Good
Well,
for
now
you.
I do like you. I thought you were mean, but now you're nice.
But yeah, to me, it's like that. Again, we're the work buddies for that night, and,
right?
And it's important. It's also, as you know, in this business, networking is key.
Oh, it's everything.
It's so important that just being nice to people and being cooperative. Like, I don't get pissed when a photographer says, "Can I put my light next to your speaker?" Sure.
Right.
You have a job to do just like I do. And if you need that light, awesome. Now, what I don't like is when a videographer keeps his light on the entire time, even when he's not filming, and it's lit up like Yankee Stadium. It's like, okay, you're not filming. Can you shut it off? Because
the photographers hate that too.
Yeah. It is what it is, and I get it. You need it and things like that. But, don't have it on while you're not filming. You're in the other room sitting down, and it's still lit up like Yankee Stadium.
Right. Well, the whole thing is, like, you have to realize, like, I just, I personally, I cannot stand it when people just don't have respect for other people. It is, like, it bothers me down to my core. The wedding that did the speed pictures,
Mm-hmm.
that wedding, most of the staff was there, like, was amazing. Like, I went there, the day of coordinator, like, spoke to me. She was, like, super, super nice. And then, so then there's, like, the individual, like, wait staff. And there must have been, like, the wait staff manager. And I was downstairs getting something to eat. And this wait staff manager, like, this girl chewed this guy out. Like, she was mean, right? Like, not correcting a situation. I guess what was, like, so bothersome to me was it wasn't like she was doing it and he was the only person there, or maybe just like his friend was the only person there. There was a stranger there. Like she very, very much knew. I was witness to him getting like chewed out, which is like slightly humiliating to have this girl chewing out this man in front of a stranger. It bothered me so much that I saw him later. I'm like, I just want to let you know, I think you're doing an amazing job. So don't listen to her.
That
like,
is so you.
It's just like, he's a person with feelings.
Right.
Treat him nicely.
I watched a kid get fired at a catering hall. I won't say the name of it, during cocktail hour. Like at this. And this place had brought in this guy to be the new GM, and you could see right away it wasn't going to work, and everyone hated him. I watched him fire this poor kid during cocktail hour. I'm just like, I wanted to do the same thing. I didn't get a chance.
Feel bad,
I was like, dude, don't worry, it's going to work out.
Like I had a lady hit my car in a parking lot. Like she just, I don't know, she was like a crazy, like she just didn't see it. And so she like backed up, just I'm laying out, just literally, she was so upset when she got out of the car. And I just gave her a hug. I'm like, it's going to be okay. Insurance will take care of it. Don't be so sad. Like, right? Like I didn't realize everybody doesn't say goodbye to the DJs.
No, a lot of them don't.
I'll go fight them for you.
Well, that's, to me, I judge in a way, and that's kind of self-righteous of me maybe, or obnoxious of me, but like, again, we're working together for these 4, 5, 6, 7 hours. We're helping each other. Just come up and say goodnight, because I want to see you again, and I want to work with you again, especially if you're a fun person, because again, to me, it gets down to, we all have to be here for these hours, and we love what we do, but it makes it better when you're working with someone that obviously is enjoying what they do and enjoying the banter. Like, I just did one at Jack's about a year ago, and the video guy just sat by himself. The two of us and the photographer, and I'm like, dude, like, come on over. He's like, I'm like, but that's how you get contacts in this business. That's how you get photographers. I want to work with this guy, not because he tells a good story over the chicken dinner we're having, but because he's professional. Right. He's friendly and he enjoys what he does. And maybe this guy didn't enjoy what he did. I don't know, but I like that banter that we get to have while we're working, swapping stories and catching up. And, it's funny you mentioned your husband. I knew your husband was a police officer because we've talked about it over the years and things like that. So you get to know people beyond just, you take pictures and I play songs. And that's, to me, one of the best parts.
Telling you, Lou told this. He was like talking to your other DJ, and he was like, I can't even remember the detail, but he was like, telling a story, but he started midway through the story, and the way he like told it, like he just started telling the story like I would just automatically know all the players in the story, and I'm like,
that's Lou.
Yeah, and I'm like, wait, what are you talking about? And then he's like, oh yeah, that text that I got, and I'm like, Lou, I'm like, Lou, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Lou, I wasn't on that text string. Fill me in.
And I'm laughing just thinking about it because it was so funny. And then the other DJ that was there working with him like saw that. I'm like, I don't know. And then like Lou kind of like was like, oh yeah, that was kind. And then I lost it. For the next 15 minutes, like tears streaming down my face. That was amazing. I want to have dinner with Lou every single night now.
Yeah, Lou is he's great like that. And it's funny, my wife will do the same thing sometimes. She'll start telling a story, and I have to remind her that the people she's talking to don't know any of the context. It's like, honey, you might want to backfill that a little
can you
first.
tell me? My husband always tells me that I need to give him bullet points. He says, make it like a news article. Give me the teaser, pique my interest, and then I'll ask for more information.
That's too funny.
Yeah, but Bob, this was amazing. Thank you so much. Where can people find you?
I guess you could find us at our website, fantasydjs.com, or Instagram, fantasydjs. Out there anywhere. Yeah,
that's one of the good things about having your business forever, right? Because you get good social media names. Yeah. We're cherryvillephotography.com. On Instagram, Cherryville Photography. Facebook, Cherryville Photography. Yep. So that's one of the benefits. But Bob is amazing. If he's your DJ personally, if any of his other DJs are there, if Lou is there, maybe he'll make you laugh so hard that you start crying too, because like that story was, I'm going to be giggling. I'm going to be giggling on the car ride home now. I know it, because it was just
That
Oh my gosh, it was he just I won't be able to breathe. It was just like endearing. So Lou is an older gentleman.
Yes.
And he's just sweet. Like he's just this older gentleman with this big personality, and you can tell he loves it. You could tell he just truly loves, like, not even so much, like I think he loves DJing, but you could tell he truly loves like being an MC. Like I feel like it's what he was born to be. So seeing him in his environment, and then he's sitting down and he's telling you this story, and I'm just like, you're everything.
and one thing about Lou is he's got the biggest heart in the world.
You could tell.
He
You could
just
tell.
he cares about people. He's genuine. It's funny. He's the one guy, like, if anything goes wrong in our company, if somebody has, unfortunately, a death in the family or they get sick or whatever, he's the first one to say, okay, guys, everybody Venmo me. I'm sending a gift basket to them.
Aww.
You know, and things like he's our go-to guy for that. He gets
He's
that
a great
stuff done.
guy. He's a great guy. So
Great
sorry,
guy.
I didn't mean to start
No,
giggling
no,
about
that's,
that.
That's okay.
I didn't mean to start giggling again halfway through, but it was just hilarious. So all of his DJs are amazing. If you're looking for a DJ for anything, because you don't do just weddings,
Yeah.
you DJ everything.
Yep.
Definitely hit him up. You will not be disappointed. And me, you can find me everywhere. The same thing under Cherryville Photography. Bob, thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody, thank you, and have a great day. That was a weird sign-off. Have a lovely time. I don't know. These are all really weird sign-offs. Thank you for joining. I don't have a cool guy sign-off. All right, bye.